Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by our friends at Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a company run by Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, former Army officer, and we thank Higher Echelon for sponsoring this podcast. You can find our podcast on all the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple. Just type, you search for Black Knight Nation. Also, check out our YouTube channel at Black Knight Nation and give us a subscribe or give us a thumbs up on the video that you're watching right now. And we would like to welcome in our special guest for tonight, Greg Gadson, former Army linebacker. Greg, thanks so much for taking the time tonight to join us.
Well, thanks, Sal. Thanks for having me, and it's certainly a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is you're a guest that we wanted to get on in a solo effort. You were came on in our tribute to Ray Ordiano earlier this year. Had some great insight with that. And Steve Anderson, the co-host for the podcast, he can't be here tonight, but Steve Anderson and I really wanted to get you on kind of tell your story a little bit. And I know that there's a lot of things that you're working on still to get your story and your message out there. So really appreciate it. We usually start the podcast out with how you got to West Point, like your recruiting story, so to speak, and what got you there, and maybe you could start with that.
Sure. So thank you, and again, a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to share a few of my perspectives, I guess, on life. So I was like many of us that play in Army. Overlooked, too small, too slow, too something, too not smart enough. I was, I thought I had done and prepared to do all the right things to play Division I football, at the next level, and seemed well on the path. UVA had made a commitment to me that I was going to go there. Ironically, it was actually the first year that the George Welch staff was there at UVA, who had just left Navy. Tom O'Brien was the coach that was recruiting me, and kind of at the last minute, they decided that they needed to address some other needs other than me, and so. I was, in the musical chair since I was out. I was out of chair, didn't have a backup plan, didn't have a way to go. Coach Ted Gill, who was a defensive line coach at Army, had come to my high school to recruit another young man named one of my classmates named Tracy Branch to take a look at him. And my coach suggested that he might as well take a look at me as well, 2 for 1, or if you will. And so that was my 5th and final visit to West Point. I honestly didn't know what it was. I mean, I knew it. I guess I had watched and heard of the Army Navy game, but I didn't naively make the connection to West Point or the military academy. And so I do remember that really my only question or concern was whether or not they played Division I football. And they said, yeah. And that's what got me. I think in a lot of ways, from that point, I had a bit of an attitude or a chip on my shoulder because I wanted to prove that I could play football at the highest level. And that was I was on that mission.
Yeah. Talking to, Army football players that have that shared the field with you, Greg. I mean, there was that, like you said, you had maybe that little chip on your shoulders. There was that aggression. Maybe I remember somebody talking about him being a freshman, you being an upperclassman, and there's a drill, and you better go 100% on the drill when you get out there with Greg. Otherwise, you're gonna feel it at the end there. Talking to us a little bit about your progression on the team, and what was it like freshman year? As far as football went, were you a guy was a scout team guy? Did you have to work your way up, or how did that go?
Well, I was fortunate that I worked my way up through the initial training camp, and so I was on the varsity. I'd worked myself up to 3rd string with a couple of seniors or firsties in front of me. but that said, look, it's a progression, and so, and as much as it's a progression physically, it's really a progression mentally and emotionally. And as I look back at it, I had two seniors in front of me, and I remember kind of feeling like I had worked for and earned the right to start, which I did my sophomore yearling year. I also kind of at the same time felt like I had inherited it, if you have one perspective, kind of in hindsight about life, about anything, is you got to work for it every day. You got to show up, and that switch or that threshold I hadn't crossed at that point. And then about halfway through my yearling year, I got fired. I got benched because I wasn't getting the job done, and that was a wake-up call. One of my best friends, Chuck Shredsman, who was another outside linebacker, never even got a chance, and I consider him very instrumental in us really first acknowledging our shortcomings, our failures, and then dedicating ourselves to make sure that we weren't going to ever let that happen again. And so, that's the journey, and it's a journey of life, and those things, we all get knocked down. We talk about the game of football is about getting knocked down and getting back up, and we say that metaphorically, we do it physically, but how many of us really do that mentally and emotionally? And that's part of the journey of life, and it's sort of what hardens us. It's what builds that character. If I, not to, get into kind of bumper sticker stuff, but I've said publicly many times that the best leadership course that I had at West Point was on the fields of Friendly Strife. It was the most consistent one. It was the one that I had. It was the continuous thread, and it's not meant to be to point out other classes or other experiences as being weak, but it was the most consistent thread in my life as a cadet.
No doubt. Like you said, there's lessons learned, right, in academics at West Point. There's lessons learned on the field that you had there, and it seemed like, like you said, you didn't want that to happen again. So I'm thinking like your last 2 years, you were making the most out of every snap, every play, every moment on the Army football team, right?
Yep, absolutely.
What are some? Do you have any? You talk to Army football players and you ask them about their fond memories or what they remember the most about their time as a football player. A lot will say the brotherhood, right? Is that what you kind of gear off to, or do you have any like moments on the field that still to this day that maybe you still have very, very fond memories of?
No, I would say the brotherhood, and this is how I characterize or share my kind of last and perhaps most profound moment as an Army football player. And it was after our bowl game against Alabama my senior year, and we lost the game by a point, and I remember being exceptionally emotional. And at first I was like, we lost the game. I've been on the short end of the stick before, and that emotion had kind of surprised me. But I think it was, and I quickly realized it was the realization that I was never going to do this again, and I was never going to be with these men doing battle again. That was it, and that finality was what overcame me emotionally.
Yeah, I mean that bowl. Not a lot of times on this podcast that we talked about that bowl game against Alabama, but I mean that's Derek Thomas and company, right? I mean that's a team that was. I mean that's an SEC power, so to speak, in Alabama. Now, of course, back then they were still consistent, no doubt. The brand name too, and man, did you have any? You saying you were getting your emotions in check after that game, right? Did you have any Alabama players come up to you after the game, and were there any moments like that maybe that you can remember, and that just just to recognize how hard you guys fought and like the respect factor there?
No, nothing that stands out after the game. But ironically, given my my relationships with the Giants, Howard Cross, who was one of their tight ends that played for the New York Giants for 11 years, we would end up developing a strong friendship and chatting and so from that standpoint, it's kind of come full circle. But not only that. A little known story was that 3 months after I was wounded, I would my first trip from Walter Reed would be to Vail, Colorado, and on this big ranch at a religious retreat, I would run into Coach Bill Curry, who was Alabama's coach. And I really credit him for encouraging me to communicate. And so, I mean, think about that, Sal. I mean, the last time that we had ever stood on the same field was literally 17 years prior to that date.
Yeah.
And the fact that we would literally run into and our coach, I liken it to be almost like two soldiers from opposite sides that fought on the battlefield once, now meeting again in peace. So.
Yeah, it's incredible that you just never know, right? When that might happen. And to say that he would, I know that he has a lot of respect for the Army football program in recent years, and to say that he was part, that motivation, that road back. We'll talk about like after West Point in a second, but here's Federica Daniel saying it's an honor to finally see Greg Gadson. My late friend Christian Stevens spoke so highly of him and wanted Marquell to meet him. This is Marquell Broughton's mom. Marquell is the 2-year captain at West Point, the Army safety. So she's watching the podcast. And she says he told Marquell about the story, which he played a role in Marquell going to West Point. So
wow. Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Yeah, we really appreciate that everybody watching. And if anybody has any other comments for Greg or us, please send them in, and we'll post them. So Greg, tell us a little bit about we talked about the bowl game. Now, tell us a little bit about your service after the bowl, and because that's what these seniors coming up for Army, and the guys who had just graduated in June, that's what you're prepared for at West Point, right? For the 4 years. And tell us a little bit about what your early service was like.
Well, I was commissioned in 1989. Field artillery was my branch, and not long after arriving at my first unit, so I signed into my first unit in February of 1990, and by late September of 1990, I was on my way to Saudi Arabia to prepare for the first Gulf War.
Wow.
And it's looking back, it's very easy to feel like that you're not going to be tested. But it's almost like going into a game and not preparing. Let's just say you're second string or third string, and you don't feel like you're going to get in the game, and then all of a sudden you're put in a game. And And what I feel, Sal, that translated from football specifically to me as a leader in the Army, was that mindset and that preparation of of preparing myself and preparing those and making sure that whatever organization I was part of, to the best of my ability, that we were prepared. Um, um, you can't what I will tell you is that when we practiced at Army, I felt like practice was a game. The level of intensity was that of a game, and so we didn't distinguish between a game and practice, and that preparation is what I carried on. And one of the things I'm really prideful for as a red leg, as a field artillery officer, is, guess what? We shoot live rounds. We don't have blank rounds. And so again, that level of urgency, that level of accuracy, that level of focus is there in peacetime as well as war. And that was a very natural transition from the fields of friendly strife to the to the battlefield.
Yeah, and I'm guessing when you're out there serving, like, and you talk about how maybe the Army football kind of those days on the practice field helped you prepare for what you were facing, real life stuff, right? I don't know if during your service time, if you bump into any of your Army football brothers out in service. Most of the time there is that, when you're serving alongside the guys that you might have shared the field with at Mikey Stadium, right? And then that's another level to that too. And that teamwork, so to speak.
Well, absolutely, Sal. And to your point, specifically, class of 91, Will Huff, who was our defensive tackle. Our lockers were literally right across from each other for 3 of my 4 years. And Will and I, Will was with the asymmetric warfare group during the surge of 2007. And ironically, his organization got to spend some time with my battalion while we were in Iraq. And the night I was wounded, he had gotten back to his TOC and found out that I was wounded. Ultimately, he would link up with me in the cache in Baghdad, and he would fly with me all the way from Baghdad to Longstuhl, Germany. So, it sounds sort of Pollyannish. It may sound fairy tale-ish, but that's what it means to be a teammate. And I tell these guys, I say, you're teammates for life. Just because your fields change or your battlefields change, when you make that investment in each other, it doesn't disappear because you're not on some football field somewhere. Yeah. That connection exists for life. My teammate Chuck Schretzman would meet me at Walter Reed. Classmates like Troy Lingley and Mike Sullivan. My PM&R doctor, Dr. Paul Pasquina, class 87, was responsible for my my rehab. A 91, class of 91, not a teammate, but a 91 grad was the one that operated on me the night I was wounded. So, this is this family we're in is significant.
Yeah. May 2007. I don't know if you would like to just go into that a little bit, what that was like for you and what you might remember. If not, we totally understand. But just what that was, and like you said, that maybe afterwards, I guess that was getting you to where you could get to the best care that you could get to, you know, after it happens is, you know, like you said, the people that were involved in that.
Yeah. It was May 7th, 2007, a little more than 15 years ago. I was ironically coming back from a memorial service for two young men in an assistant battalion in my brigade that had been killed a few days earlier. And so I was heading back to my headquarters, and that's when my vehicle was hit. You know, the blast blew me out of my vehicle. I can recall flying through the air and coming to a rolling stop on my back, and I knew I was hurt. I knew it was significant, and I knew I was in trouble. And as a leader, I would say this: as a leader, you never imagine that the men and women that you are preparing to go to combat are ultimately going to save your life. And that's exactly what happened that night.
And so then you had talked about, you know, the road back, so to speak, and just the people that were involved with that, and how, you know, got from motivation from Bill Curry to Chuck Stretzman to Mike Sullivan, and you named the list long. And I'm guessing that is what keeps you going through something like that once the shock is over with it, or
yeah, their encouragement is absolutely profound and significant. But you know what I also would tell you this is, every day we have a chance to build on who we are. And I like to say to be the best that we can be. And over time, I suspect that ultimately becomes your character. It becomes who you are. And what I will say, Sal, is in my lowest moments, when I wanted to quit, when I didn't feel like I could go on, it wasn't in my character to. It was so much worse. Quitting was so much worse than what I was faced with. And so, that's, we talk about resiliency so much. But I think resiliency is character. It's not a switch you turn on and say, I have to be resilient. Just like we don't turn on our character. It's with us or it's not. And every day we have a chance to build on it. And I'm grateful that I've had people around me that has challenged me, teammates that have loved me, teammates that have held me accountable, so that I've had that character, had that resilience that I've needed, in my life. Andrew, thank you, brother. I think you're in Hawaii, aren't you? Aloha.
Andrew King's been on the podcast a couple of times. Army captain. Really, when Army had the Renaissance, he was right there in the middle of it. When they ended the streak in Navy, he in 2016, he was one of the captains. And Andrew says Colonel Gadson's leadership and resilience has guided my life, not only as a football player, but as an Army officer and a man. Thank you, sir. I believe that Andrew's now pursuing law, but I believe Andrew's pursuing law. I want to say Fordham, if I'm correct. So, Andrew, great. And that's what we're talking about, right? This is Greg. So you played, right, probably 25 years before Andrew got on the field, and this is the connections between the players are just, it's unreal in the Army football program.
Well, look, just as Andrew and I stood on the players that came before me, the next generation will stand on the shoulders of Andrew. And so it's about paying it forward. And it's Andrew, it's really cool. I'm really proud of you to see you pursuing pursuing excellence, and that's that's what this life's about, and it's about being our best, living our best selves, and more power to you. And for anybody out there, if there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, glad this podcast can connect football players, linebackers of our some of the best linebackers that Army's ever seen, having a connection here on the Black Knight Nation podcast. Maybe so Greg, I know that like a lot. Maybe we could talk about the Giants. Your involvement with the Giants. You mentioned Howard Cross earlier in the podcast, and how you I think it was it 2008 that was the speech that you had with the Giants that kind of got them in the right direction?
It was the 2007-2008 season. So
yeah.
So a few months after I was wounded, Mike Sullivan, who was a wide receivers coach for the New York Giants, had asked if I'd be willing to kind of share a few of my perspectives on life with the team. And so I did. The third game of the season, when they came to the DC to play the then Washington Redskins. I know they're the Commanders now. Yeah. And so that began a relationship with the team. They I when I look back at it, first I say, imagine that I'm able to share a story in an environment that was already created. I had nothing to do with, in an environment that was ready to hear my message. And so, it's not magic. It's not fairy dust or anything. I just shared a few things I thought were important in life, and these men took it to heart, and then they started achieving excellence, started pursuing excellence. And so, I didn't call any plays. I didn't play any plays. I just, tried to lend a little moral support, if you will.
What was that ride like for you? Just to stay, in contact with the team as they go on that run to win the Super Bowl and knock off, the mighty Patriots and Tom Brady.
Yeah, well, it was significant, and it was significant from this perspective. Maybe not one that most would appreciate, but it was, I had been a battalion commander, Sal, and I had never in my life not come back home with my soldiers. And I will tell you, I experienced a lot of guilt. I mean, because I wasn't there with them. And I couldn't have had a better experience to give me something that showed that I could contribute, showed that I could make a difference, showed that I was on a, not that I was thrown out of the Army, but I could be a teammate again. And it's exactly what I needed to help uplift my spirits and continue to drive on.
I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, and maybe did the Giants give you a Super Bowl ring?
Yes. Yeah, I've been asked it before, and yes, they did. I actually got one for the second Super Bowl when we beat the Patriots too. So I've got a couple of Super Bowl rings as well. Very nice,
very nice. So it wasn't just the relationship with the Giants that season that carried over to where, I'm guessing you would maybe have some speeches too during after that Super Bowl win too with the team and stuff, or just be around the team, so to speak.
Yeah. I was able to kind of spend a lot of time with the team, especially while Coach Coughlin was the head coach. Once Coach Coughlin left, and they started, a lot of the personnel started to change around, and they don't even know who I am anymore. I mean, not in a negative way, but just things change. Look, I'm not upset or anything like that. Just it's just that's what happens in life.
No doubt. So after the Super Bowl, with the first Super Bowl with the Giants, and even up to now, I mean, you're still, your story and message, you're still out there. Are you doing any public speaking? Like what are you up to now? What's Greg Gadson up to now?
Yeah, so I'm doing some. I have a small company that I'm actually partnering with another Army football alumni, Kirk Gutierrez, class of '86, and so he and I have a small company that we're doing service-based government contracting, and I continue to have an active public speaking. Doing corporate stuff. I work with Thayer Leadership, and a handful of speakers bureaus. So that keeps you busy. I'm still even able to act here from on occasion. So Sal, what I would say is I'm a jack of all trades, master at none. So just staying active, staying busy, trying to make a difference.
What's your last acting venture you were on?
Well, I have a small and minor role at the end of a movie called A Journal for Jordan that Denzel Washington directed, and I got something upcoming. I'm gonna be got a small part in one of the upcoming episodes of NCIS Los Angeles. So.
Very, very, very cool. That's certainly a series that everyone watches. It was Battleship that you had. Was that your first time?
Battleship. Yeah, Battleship. And there was this family or kids series called The Inspectors. I did like 10 episodes in that as well. So.
Wow. You got your own IMDb profile, I'm guessing, Greg, out there.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Battleship. What was that? What was that like? Because was that your first time acting or no?
Yeah, that was my first time. Yeah.
Any memories from that?
Well, I'd never done it before. I never played a tree in a school play. So, looking back, and I think it's not easy. But I almost felt like an athlete. I felt like an athlete, with a coach, and I'm trying to do the best I can to do what they want. So,
no doubt. Before we go, we appreciate everybody that's watched the podcast. We thank Andrew King for coming in with some messages, and Federica Daniels also. Is there a message that maybe you have to maybe this year's Army team, or maybe just a message in general for people that have followed you or know your story? And is there a message that you'd like to give?
Well, I guess what I would say to the upcoming team is something that I think I try to say consistently is be present, be your best, and you can be at peace. And so it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's a challenge, and there's a lot of things that are challenging in your life, and all I'm challenging you to do is for every one of those things that's in your life, be where you're at and be your best that you can, and that's all you can do. Yeah,
and that's the kind of the model of the team, right? There's really no one, and in the Jeff Monken era, there's really no one player. It's 11 players on offense and defense have to work together to have success, and special teams has to be clicking too. And they've seen that in the last couple of years at Army, and we'll see this year. Pretty exciting to get going. Greg, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it, guys. If you're watching this podcast, you could check other podcasts out. Couple of guys he mentioned, Kirk Gutierrez has been on one of our podcasts. Will Huff, we've had Will Huff on the Black Knight Nation podcast also, and he mentioned the story about being with Greg after Greg was wounded. So we really appreciate you all, everybody watching, and please check out Black Knight Nation's YouTube channel. You could find all those archived videos. Greg, again, thanks so much for spending some time with us, and we look forward to having you on down the road.
Absolutely, Sal. Thanks for having me on.